Emily Carter pressed her hand against the chipped paint of the flat's front door, pausing as if waiting for a voice to call her back. The silence behind her was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge and the ticking of the clock in the living room. James was still asleep, unaware that the life they had promised to share was already unraveling. She tightened her grip on the handle of her suitcase and whispered to herself, "No more small dreams." The dawn air outside was cold, carrying the smell of rain. A cab waited on the curb, its headlights casting long shadows across the narrow street. She climbed in, heart pounding, replaying the words that had pulled her across an invisible line. Prince Karim's messages had been intoxicating. Promises of freedom, of wealth, of a love so grand, it eclipsed everything she had known. Each letter and late-night call had built a new reality, where she wasn't a wife struggling to pay rent, but a woman chosen, adored, lifted into royalty. Back inside the flat, James stirred in bed. He reached for her pillow, still warm, and muttered, his eyes open to emptiness. Confusion pressed against his chest. The bathroom light was off, her slippers neatly aligned. By the door, the hooks that should have held her coat were bare. Panic crawled into his throat. He rushed to the kitchen, dialing her mobile. Straight to voicemail. He slammed the phone down, staring at the note she hadn't written. His hands shook as he gripped the counter. "What the hell are you doing, Emily?" In the cab, Emily pressed her forehead against the glass, watching London blur past. She thought of James, his steady smile, the way he believed in her even when she doubted herself. Guilt gnawed at her, but Karim's voice echoed louder. "You were never meant for a life of scraping by. I will give you the world." At Heathrow, she pulled her coat tight around her, concealing the satin blouse James had chosen for her birthday dinner months ago. She had said yes then with hope. Today she boarded a plane with betrayal. James paced their small living room, knocking over a chair in his frenzy. He called her friends, her mother, even her workplace. No one knew anything. Whispers began the same day, neighbors at the corner shop, colleagues exchanging looks, pity-laced sentences. She was too young. She wanted more. By the time evening fell, James sat alone in the dim light, head buried in his hands. On the table lay their wedding photo, edges worn from her touch. He couldn't bring himself to frame it now. Above the clouds, Emily leaned back in her seat, gripping the boarding pass stamped Dubai. Her chest swelled with fear and anticipation. Somewhere between the fading city and the desert awaiting her, she believed she was stepping into destiny. What neither of them knew, James staring into silence, Emily chasing illusions, was that the door closing that morning would never open the same way again. The promise of paradise was already sharpening its teeth, waiting just beyond the palace gates. The desert sun burned white as Emily's plane descended over Dubai. The city gleamed like a mirage, glass towers rising against endless sand, promises carved in steel and gold. Her heart hammered as she stepped into the airport, searching for the man whose words had rewritten her life. Prince Karim was waiting. Tall, immaculately dressed, his presence drew stares even in the anonymity of arrivals. He kissed her cheek lightly, the scent of expensive cologne lingering. "Welcome home, my jewel," he said. His English carried a soft accent, smooth as velvet, but beneath it she sensed command. She smiled nervously, clutching her passport as if it tethered her to the world she was leaving behind. Outside, a sleek black car slid to the curb. Tinted windows swallowed her reflection as she climbed in beside him. The city blurred past, neon signs, desert roads, sudden stretches of emptiness. Emily pressed her palms together, whispering, "It feels like a dream." Karim turned, his smile sharp. "No, Emily. Dreams fade. This is forever." The palace rose like something from another century, hidden behind high gates. Its marble columns glistened under lantern light, fountains spilling into pools where rose petals floated. Guards lined the entrance, their eyes unflinching. Emily's breath caught. She had stepped into a fairy tale. Inside, rooms spread endlessly. Golden chandeliers, silk curtains, hallways echoing with footsteps that weren't hers. Karim led her through, his hand firm at her back. "This is your sanctuary," he told her, No one can touch you here. Yet that first night when she lay in a bed larger than her entire London flat, unease pressed against her chest. The silence was too deep, the doors too heavy. She thought of James, of the small flat with its chipped paint, of the comfort of ordinary mornings. She shook the thought away. I chose this. I wanted more. Days passed in a blur of luxury. Dresses arrived in boxes tied with ribbons. Servants filled her closets. Meals were endless courses of delicacies she couldn't name. Karim paraded her at private gatherings, where men in tailored suits and jeweled women glanced her way with unraidable eyes. Their whispers followed her. At night, Karim's charm was intoxicating, his attention overwhelming. He spoke of destiny, of how he had seen in her a spirit that belonged only to him. Yet sometimes, when she asked simple questions about his family, about his business, his gaze hardened. "Do not ask things that are not yours to know," he said once, his hand tightening around her wrist. She laughed nervously, brushing it aside, but the bruise lingered for days. Emily began noticing things others pretended not to see. A servant girl, eyes downcast, slipping quickly out of sight. A locked wing of the palace, where footsteps echoed at night. Women at parties who smiled with perfect teeth, but whose eyes darted nervously whenever Karim passed too close. One evening she asked a maid her age. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "You are lucky, madam. He still smiles at you." Before Emily could reply, another servant appeared, and the girl vanished. The palace no longer felt like sanctuary, but cage. Emily wrote secret messages in her journal, words she dared not say aloud. "I thought I was chosen." But chosen for what? Karim noticed her silences. "You doubt me," he said one night, his tone soft yet chilling. She shook her head quickly. "No, I'm just adjusting." His smile returned, but it never touched his eyes. She turned to the window when he left, staring into the endless desert stretching beyond the gates. For the first time she wondered if freedom had simply traded one prison for another. And far away in London, James sat awake at his empty table, unaware that whispers of danger were already beginning to circle across oceans. James Carter stared at the empty chair across his kitchen table. 2 years had passed, yet the outline of her absence still haunted the flat. The neighbors had stopped asking questions, but their eyes told the same story. Pity for the man whose wife had traded vows for gold. He worked longer hours, returned to silence, and avoided mirrors. But one evening, as he opened his laptop, a new message blinked in his inbox. No subject line, no sender, just words. "She is not safe. Do not forget her." James froze. His first thought was cruel, some sick joke. He deleted it, shut the screen, tried to forget. But 2 nights later, another arrived. "The palace is not what it seems. Ask yourself why she has not written you." His heart thudded. He had told himself Emily left willingly, that she wanted riches, luxury, a life without him. He had tried to bury the wound under anger, but the words carved it open again. He replied with trembling hands, "Who are you?" No answer came. At work he stared at spreadsheets without seeing them. At night he paced. He dug through old emails, rereading her last ones, her sudden coldness before she vanished. Excuses that now seemed rehearsed. One line stopped him. "Please don't ask questions. I can't answer yet." James called her mother, his voice strained. "Have you heard from her?" "No," she said sharply. "And if she's living her dream, why should I want to?" Bitterness cracked through, masking pain. "She made her choice, James." But choices, he thought, didn't leave bruises in words whispered across oceans. One rainy evening, another message arrived. This time, a photograph attachment, the edge of a gilded corridor, a blurred figure in silk passing through. The caption read, "Behind closed doors, she cries." James stared until his hands shook. He wanted to believe it was staged. Yet something in the slump of her shoulders, in the hurried blur of the image, convinced him it was real. He dialed her number again. Voicemail. Always voicemail. His voice cracked into the recording. "Emily, if you hear this, just tell me you're alive." The emails stopped as suddenly as they began. Silence stretched into weeks. He grew restless, imagining the sender silenced, imagining Emily trapped, imagining worse. His anger at her betrayal tangled with guilt, with a desperate need to know if she was still breathing. One night he whispered to himself, "I can't just let her vanish." He began printing the emails, saving the photograph, building a quiet file in a drawer no one else would open. It wasn't evidence, not yet, but it was all he had. Across the sea, beyond the desert, Emily stood at her window, unaware of the desperate man who still searched for her shadow. The palace lights shimmered behind her, but the darkness pressing closer was no longer just his imagination. The palace glittered at night, but Emily no longer marveled at its chandeliers or golden arches. Beauty blurred into repetition. Every room looked like another prison dressed in silk. She had learned to smile when Karim wanted, to stay silent when his eyes grew cold. At first she told herself it was stress, that princes bore burdens she couldn't understand, but the cracks widened quickly. One evening, over dinner, she asked softly, "Will I ever meet your family?" Karim's fork froze mid-air. He set it down carefully, lips curling into a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "My family does not concern itself with what is mine." His voice lowered. "And you are mine." She forced a laugh, though her chest tightened. "I only meant—" His hand clamped over hers, strong enough to hurt. "Do not ask again." Later that night, as she nursed her wrist in the mirror, a maid appeared, eyes darting nervously. "Madam," she whispered, "you must be careful." Emily turned, startled. "Careful of what?" The girl hesitated, then looked at the door. There were others, her words barely audible. They did not last. Before Emily could speak, another servant's footsteps echoed down the hall, and the girl vanished. The warning gnawed at her. She began noticing details she had ignored before. The way the guards rarely let her walk alone, the doors that locked from the outside, the hush that fell when Karim entered a room. At parties she saw women who smiled too brightly. Their laughter rehearsed, their eyes flat, tired, told her everything. One night Karim returned later than usual, smelling of perfume not hers. She waited in silence, heart racing. When he leaned close, she asked, "Where were you?" His smile was cruel. "You forget who you are speaking to." "I deserve honesty," she pressed, surprising even herself. The glass in his hand shattered against the wall. Shards scattered across the marble, sparkling like stars. He moved close, gripping her chin so tightly she could barely breathe. "You deserve what I give you, nothing more." When he left, she slid to the floor, tears streaking down her cheeks. The palace no longer shimmered. It suffocated. The next day, she sought out the maid again, finding her in the laundry room. "What did you mean about others?" Emily asked. The girl's hands trembled over folded sheets. Some tried to leave. Some spoke too loudly. "They are gone now." "Gone where?" The girl shook her head violently. "Do not ask. Walls have ears." Emily's stomach twisted. She thought of James, of the life she had thrown away, of the freedom she once craved. She imagined him somewhere far off, living without her, perhaps hating her. Yet part of her clung to the possibility he still cared. That night, Karim returned bearing jewelry, a necklace heavy with emeralds. "Wear this," he said, fastening it around her neck. His touch was gentle, his tone sweet, but his eyes were watchful, calculating, as though measuring how far she would bend before she broke. Emily smiled weakly, letting him believe she was still under his spell. Inside, she felt the first stirrings of rebellion. She began writing in her journal again, tiny entries hidden beneath the mattress, words she could never say aloud. "I am not safe. If anyone ever finds this, know I tried to survive." In the desert outside, winds howled against the palace walls. Inside, the mask Karim wore slipped further, each day, revealing a darkness no gold could disguise. And Emily, trapped in silk and shadows, realized hope might be her most dangerous possession. The desert did not give up its secrets easily. But one morning, a group of laborers digging near the outskirts of Dubai stumbled upon what the sand had tried to keep. Half buried beneath shifting dunes lay the remains of a woman, The wind carried the stench before they saw her, limbs twisted unnaturally, clothing torn and faded by sun. Only half a body remained, the rest lost to scavengers and time. Police arrived quickly, cordoning the site. Their radios crackled, their eyes tense, but their words were careful, measured. Within hours, the remains were whisked away under tarps, trucks kicking dust over the evidence of horror. The story should have ended there, in silence, as many others had, but rumors drifted beyond the walls of authority. A name surfaced in whispers: Emily Carter. In London, James received the call no one wants. A British consulate officer, voice flat, told him, "Mr. Carter, remains found in Dubai match your wife's dental records." James gripped the phone so tightly it nearly slipped. His throat closed. "Remains?" The word choked him. "You telling me she's dead?" "I'm sorry," the voice replied, rehearsed, detached. "There will be no formal investigation. Circumstances surrounding her death are unclear." James collapsed into the chair, tears burning his eyes. Half a body, that was all they gave back to him after 2 years of silence. Half a truth, half a life. At the corner shop, neighbors lowered their voices. "It was her, wasn't it? The young wife who ran off." Another shook her head. "Left everything for riches. Look how it ended. Their pity cut deeper than cruelty." James shut himself in the flat, blinds drawn. He spread the file he had built, emails, the photograph, his desperate notes, and stared at them until his vision blurred. "I told you," he whispered to the empty room. "I knew you weren't safe." But his whispers changed nothing. In Dubai, officials said nothing further. No suspect was named. No inquiry was opened. The palace gates remained closed, untouched by scandal. Late at night, James dreamed of her voice calling from behind those gates. He woke gasping, haunted by the thought that Emily had died, believing he had forgotten her. And somewhere, in the city of glass towers, the palace lights still glowed. Behind them, silence reigned. Those who served there said nothing. Those who saw too much disappeared. The desert had revealed half a body, but it kept the rest of the story buried. The news of Emily's death should have ended in a few clipped lines, swallowed by desert winds. But one person refused to let it vanish. Layla Haddad, an investigative journalist known for digging into stories others were too afraid to touch. She read the whispers online, an unnamed foreign woman found half buried in the sands. The official statement was a single sentence: "Circumstances under investigation, no foul play suspected." Layla had heard those words before. They were code for silence, bought at a price. She began calling her contacts. One servant spoke quickly, then hung up. It was her, the foreigner, in the palace. "Don't ask again," another source warned her. "You are risking everything. Powerful men don't like questions." Layla pressed on. She pieced together fragments, photographs of Emily at exclusive gatherings, records of her name on a private flight list, testimonies from maids who vanished after speaking too freely. Each clue pointed to a pattern. Women lured with promises, locked away in palaces, erased when they became inconvenient. At night she wrote in her notebook, half a body, half a story. They want it forgotten. Meanwhile, in London, James answered a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice. "Mr. Carter, my name is Layla Haddad. I believe I know what happened to your wife." James gripped the receiver. "Everyone tells me to forget. Why should I trust you?" "Because I won't," she said. "But you must understand, the man she lived with has power beyond borders. Exposing him could cost us both everything." James hesitated, torn between despair and the fragile thread of hope. "What do you want from me?" "Her story," Layla replied. "Anything you can give me. Emails, photographs, words she left behind." They spoke for hours. James shared the file he had guarded for 2 years. The anonymous emails, the blurred corridor photo, the notes he had scribbled when grief was too heavy to bear. Layla listened, her pen scratching furiously. For the first time, his pain felt like more than a wound. It was evidence. Days turned into weeks. Layla followed leads into the city's underbelly, meeting women who spoke behind locked doors, their eyes darting to shadows. One revealed scars across her wrists. "I escaped," she whispered. "But no one believed me. They never do." Another handed her a crumpled photograph, a young woman in silk, face pale with fear. Emily stood just behind her, smiling faintly, as if posing for a picture she did not want taken. Layla carried these fragments back to her small apartment, spreading them across her desk. The picture forming was undeniable, a network of silence, a trail of women whose names had been erased. One night, as she returned home, she noticed a black car parked outside. The same car was there the next evening. She felt eyes on her when she walked the market. A note slipped under her door read, "Stop digging, or you'll join her." Fear coiled in her chest, but Layla kept writing. She drafted the first lines of the article that might cost her life. The desert does not bury its secrets, it is forced to swallow them. In London, James received an email from her with the subject line, "Proof." Attached were testimonies, photographs, and a draft of her report. The words burned through him. Emily had never been free. She had been watched, controlled, silenced until death. He sat in the dark, staring at the screen, torn between grief and fury. Layla was ready to publish, but she needed him to decide. Did he want to rip open the wound, risking everything, or let Emily's half-body remain a half-truth forever? The choice pressed on him like a weight. And outside, across the sea, the palace walls stood tall, their silence unbroken. For now, Layla's article exploded worldwide, naming Emily as the forgotten bride. For days, outrage filled headlines, protests lit candles, and James stood at her grave whispering, "I thought you left me. I didn't fight soon enough." Yet Karim denied all. The palace gates gleaming untarnished, Layla faced threats, her sources silenced, and slowly the world moved on. Only fragments remained, forums, whispers, shadows of truth. One final anonymous message reached James. She fought until the end. He clung to it, knowing justice would never shine in daylight. Emily's story lived only in shadows, half told, yet impossible to forget.